Hello everyone, and welcome to my review for Jujutsu Kaisen chapter 227. Once again, I wasn't able to do a reaction to the chapter, and it's out a bit late because I was out of town, didn't have a chance to record, and wouldn't have been able to upload the recording anyway if I was. But now I'm back home, and now I can talk about this week's chapter. But before we get into that, as always, if you haven't already, definitely be sure to like and subscribe. I'd like to try and hit at least 100 likes on this week's review. Now then, this week's chapter continues the trend of being good. This fight is turning out really good thus far. I'm really liking it. And the reason I've liked it so much is because it's not really what I expected, originally, and I don't think it's what a lot of other people expected. I feel like a lot of people expected it to be primarily, oh, it's a big domain clash, it's just a sheer power clash between these two guys who are undoubtedly the strongest, and we're just going to see which one of them is more powerful than the other. And that's not what it's been. High-level Jujutsu battles are 5D chess. That's what the title of the video is going to be, probably. When you have two people who are so high in power and who are so knowledgeable on the arts of Jujutsu sorcery, and they clash with each other, it's not going to be decided by just who is stronger. It's going to be decided by who is better at using Jujutsu sorcery. Who is better at using and bending the rules of Jujutsu sorcery. That's what this whole chapter is these guys fucking around with the rules. So, we already went over the using reverse curse technique to heal your depleted curse technique thing last week, so I'm not going to go over it again here. They go over it again at the start of this chapter. Now, I had my big prediction on the two things that Gojo could do after the end of last chapter. And instead of doing that, he decided to just expand his domain again. Why? Because he's Gojo. And Gojo can't be one-upped, So he expands his domain again, but he changes the conditions of the barrier so that the outside is harder to break and the inside is easier to break. No one has ever done this before, because why the fuck would they do this? Barriers have got to be one of my favorite things in Jujutsu, which is really weird, because I never really thought I would have said that until thinking about things quite recently. They really are just a blank canvas for using the power system upon. They're like a physical manifestation of the power system. It's just a thing you can apply rules onto with addition and subtraction. There will be pros and cons to whatever you decide to do with the barrier. And I really like that. I think that's really cool. So, yeah, Gojo does that. And, for some reason, Sukuna doesn't try to break out. What is that reason? Because why would Sukuna break out? He doesn't give a shit. So they go back to their usual combat, and this is where we find out something absolutely fascinating. That you can use domain amplification at the same time as using your domain expansion with the sure hit effect. Normally, you can't use your curse technique while using domain amplification. It's the trade-off. But when you use your domain, it's not you that's using your technique anymore, it's the domain. So you can do them both at the same time. How convenient. Gojo doesn't really give a shit, though, because it doesn't really matter to him if you can hit him. He's still the strongest. Maybe. But then Sukuna does something absolutely amazing. He turns off the sure hit effect of his domain. And then goes back to back with Gojo, using domain amplification so he can touch him. So even though the sure hit effect of his domain is turned off, he is not being affected by Unlimited Void. Now, why would he turn off the sure hit effect of his domain? Well, That's because he needs to do a little trade-off. He needs to change the conditions of his own domain for the circumstance. So, in return for not having the sure hit effect of his domain inside of Gojo's, he increases its power outside Gojo's domain, enough so that it can break Gojo's again. This is just a great example of the, 10,000 IQ plays, the 5D chess that goes on with people at this level of power who are just casually able to do things that would be an impossible feat to imagine for other people. Just the switching of domain conditions on the fly. No one else can do this. Maybe Kenjaku can do this because, they're like 1,200 years old and they're the god of barriers now that Tengen is their puppet. Maybe they could. And maybe some of the people watching this fight could now, or in the future, because you've got Yuta, you've got Hikari, you got Higuruma, all of these people who are very good at learning and have a lot of room to grow are watching this fight between the two people who maybe haven't reached their full potential yet. Their struggle here is going to see how far they can push their potential. But who show everything that is possible. Because, if there's anyone that's going to show everything that's physically possible, it'll be the two people who are the most powerful. So we'll see how much higher those others can reach with the knowledge they gain from watching this battle. But Sukuna destroys Gojo's barrier again, and it starts cutting him up once more. Kashimo says that if Gojo dies, he's gonna go out next, which, that's the plan. A lot of people going, oh my god, Kashimo thinks he's him, he's gonna get slumped. Yeah, that's the plan. I think you have to be delusional to think the plan is not for Kashimo to do some kind of absolutely batshit insane kamikaze technique and then die. That's the plan. Kashimo's here to die, but he's gonna die in spectacular fashion, so I'm greatly looking forward to that. Now, Gojo, instead of using Simple Domain, uses Falling Blossom Emotion to protect himself from Sukuna's attacks, which surprises Sukuna because that is not a technique that he would be aware of. It was created after his time, and it was a secret technique of the big families. So, finally Sukuna's seeing something new here. The explanation of the trade-offs for Falling Blossom Emotion versus Simple Domain are really good, because it provides good reasoning as to why you would use one over the other. And it's not, explicitly one is better than the other. It's just they're better for different circumstances. This technique wouldn't do shit against something like Unlimited Void. It's useless against complicated sure hit effects. But against a simple technique like Sukuna's, it's golden. And, there's another reason why Gojo is like, my fucking technique is so much better than yours. However, it's not complete nullification like Simple Domain, so you're still gonna get cut up. Then, Gojo incredibly quickly replenishes his technique and casts his domain again, but he casts it like 10 times bigger than Sukuna's domain is right now, so he can capture the full extent of its potential range. Now, expanding your domain this far is going to make it so that its technique, its potency is way weaker. We know that Sukuna shrinking his domain increases the intensity of his technique within that space. So obviously making it way bigger than it's supposed to be is going to decrease its potency. So you would kind of just be getting like, I don't know, a little bit of a slideshow flashbang while within this space, as opposed to like your brain has just been filled with 17 encyclopedias in the last half second, That'll be the difference. First off, it's insanely impressive for Gojo to just make his domain this big on the fly. It's just... the thing that makes Gojo, or I suppose one of the things that makes Gojo so insanely powerful is just that he can decide, oh, what if I do this? And then he just does it. He just makes shit up on the fly. He can just do whatever, really. He just has all of the gifts required to do that. He's a fucking prodigy. He's got the 6 eyes. He's got absurd amounts of cursed energy. He's got a busted technique. He's got everything he needs. Now, why would Gojo expand his domain to be so big that, presumably his technique within would be incredibly weak? Well, it's time for another weakness of barrierless domains. They can't stop themselves from getting captured inside of another barrier. As Gojo's domain shrinks to become tiny. And I mean tiny. The scale here is hard to say, but it's just like this little orb inside of the crater from where Malevolent Shrine was. And Malevolent Shrine is not there anymore. So if you have a barrierless domain, I suppose it's fairly easy? I don't know if easy is really the right word here, but it's possible for someone to just trap your entire domain inside of theirs. The other thing, range has a relation to intensity. The bigger the range of your domain expansion, the weaker the intensity of your technique is going to be. When you shrink it down to, I don't know how big this is, but, you know, for hyperbole's sake, the size of a basketball. What do you think the inside of that domain is like right now? What sort of brain blast do you think Sukuna will get if his sure hit effect goes away? What do you think is going to happen? I also have to wonder if it affects the stat amp that someone gets while within their own domain. Because if it does, oh my god, is Gojo going to be absolutely fucking absurd when it comes to the hand-to-hand combat they're obviously going to keep doing in there. So, yeah, that's all for the chapter. It's really good. This fight's great so far. It's so good. It really is just showing that the top tiers of the verse are still part of the power system. So the rules of the power system still apply, in the sense that we're going to be bending them in ways that nobody knew was possible. But we're not quite gonna break them. We're just going to manipulate the shit out of them. And that makes for a grand old time. Now, fortunately, I'm not out of town next week, so I should be able to react to the chapter like usual and have that in the review out at the normal time. So, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, so that you don't miss that when it comes out. And until next time, I'll see you guys around. Take care.